waiting for the Michal. I heard a very nice. I heard a very nice thing from Shlomo Levenstein. He's like he's a mashgiach. He's a funny guy. So he said that Rabbi Levi Yitzchak B'Ditchev, everyone knows he was always looking to be Melamed Schus on Klal Yisrael. So the famous story with Rabbi Levi Yitzchak is that he saw someone film, and he was Melamed Schus by saying that look at your Yidden, even while they're polishing their wheels, they're still davening. That was
Is it your internet?
So he said that for Levi Yitzchak would walk into a shul today, he had cell phones, he would say, look at Klal Yisrael. They took a train station and they made it. It's my internet. Let me see what I can do to improve it. Oh, it's Vach of David.
It's your.
How was Yom Tov?
How was my backyard? Was great. It was a little nippy in the morning, but it got better. But it was very nice. We had a very successful. Whatever you said.
Try again, yes.
Yeah.
We didn't. We lost him.
How many people have been?
How many? I think around.
How many people
I'm thinking. It was around 15, 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
We hear you.
I hear you. I guess you know. About 15, 16, there are a few people that, were in quarantine dubbing in my back. Well. Not,
It's a new year and the same old internet problems.
Yeah.
Is it better if I shut up?
If you shut up? Is that what he said? Is it better if he shuts up?
Well, he left. He must have meant that.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
For now, the moment.
Still bad, or
yeah.
can you hear me now?
Now we hear you.
We hear you.
Okay. I have to file a complaint with my neighbor's internet service.
Okay.
Where did your brother Shlomi daven over Yom Tov?
Early minion in the Aguda.
He was in there good at Yosy. We saw him.
Downstairs.
Yes, he just closed. Yeah, I saw him come up by we were having Musaf. He came up from downstairs.
So how was it?
Okay, but we're gonna have to do.
It's very nice. Very nice. Yeah.
I thought it was very. Yeah. Very, very nice. Okay, free my Gemara because
All the plans worked out?
it's
Baruch Hashem.
yeah.
You guys
Oh,
are.
thank you very much. I got an Aliyah. I'm not sure if everybody knows about it, but I was told that the oil bomb in Aliyah. So I want to.
I hope you said the bracha clearer than you're coming now.
Okay. Yes, I have to. I'm not putting my Gemara on because
It was a live connection. It wasn't the internet, Aliyah. There he goes again. It's not a good start to the year.
Okay, I tried a different internet service. I'm not sure if it's better or worse.
So
The
far,
other
it's
neighbor?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to get very cocky, and I'm going to even try to put my Gemara and see if it shuts me out.
You know what? We're live now, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Okay, so let's get started. We're at the bottom of Mem Aleph from the days. Amar Apapa. Let me get my glasses on. Okay, Zok Tehillah Gemara. Amar Apapa. Apapa said, it's like 4 lines from the bottom, I think. Perish sheyatzu chut l'tchum. So our Mishnah was talking about if someone gets pulled out of the tchum on Shabbos, finds himself out of the tchum, he's stuck within 4 amas, can't move at all. So our Papa said, David, perish sheyatzu chut l'tchum. What if you have perish? Now we all know that whatever belongs to you is also limited in its travel on Shabbos, the same way you are. Wherever you're allowed to be, your objects are allowed to be. And wherever you're not allowed to be, your possessions are not allowed to be. So if your parents left the tchum on Shabbos, so when they're out of the tchum, they can't be used. But the chosru, they were brought back in. Afilu b'mezid, even if someone illegally brought the parents back in, lo yifsidu es mechon. They're back to being mobile together with their bailim to his entire area that he can travel. And even though these pairs were once outside of the Tchum de Shabbos, they're not penalized. My time anusin. The pairs are anusin. Rashi says, Al Yidei Hamoitzion. Pairs can't pick themselves up and walk. Someone took them out. So therefore, the pairs are not penalized, so to speak. And when they're brought back into the same Tchum as their owner, they have the same status as the owner. The Brisa says, Rabbi Nechemia, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Ayman, la'olam asurim ad sheyechzru l'mekayman shoyim. Peiros that leave someone's tchum will always be usher until they return to the place where they belong, and it has to be b'shoyim. B'shoyim again, the mezid loy. So this is a direct contradiction to what Rav Papa said. Rav Papa said even if they came back into his domain, the mezid, you'll be able to move them around. While Rav Nechem and Rav Eliezer say only if they return back to where they belong, shoyim. So Gemara, you're right. There are Tanoim, Rav Nechem and Rav Eliezer will disagree with Rav Papa. But Tanoihi, it happens to be a machlokes Tanoim, and we're going to illustrate that there are Tanoim who argue on Rav Nechemia and Rav Eliezer, and those Tanoim will be consistent with Rav Papa. Titania, perish sheyatzu chutz l'tchum b'shoyim yochelu, the mezid lo yochelu. So now we're talking about Paris that didn't leave the tchum and come back, but they left the tchum and they're remaining out of the tchum. So if they left the tchum b'shoyim, then they can be eaten. The mezid lo yochelu. So the first question is, who's going to eat them? You can't eat them because you're in the tchum and they're out of the tchum. So who's going to eat them? So Rashi says if there's somebody out there who those pairs are within his tchum, a third party, he could eat them. But the mezid lo yachelu, if they went out the mezid, they cannot be eaten. So this case is not the same case as Rav Papa, of course. Rav Papa talks about when the pairs came back in to Yerushos. So let's see what the Brisa continues to say. So Rav Nechemia comes back on the stage, and he says, if they're in the right place, they go back to the place where they started from, they can eat. If they're not in the right place, they can't be eaten. So this is a shtickle dyslexic machlokes, because the Chachamim are talking about pairs that are out of the tchum, and the Nechemia are talking about pairs that came back in. So what are they arguing about? They don't seem to be talking about the same case. So Zok Gemara, what exactly does Nechemia mean that if the pairs come back in to your shus or into your tchum, that you're allowed to use them on Shabbos? If you want to suggest that Nechemia says that if the pairs come back in to your tchum, even if they come back from Mezid, you could still use them. It can't be that Rabbi Nechemia holds that, because our whole kasha started from the Brisa that contradicts this. So that's non-negotiable. Rabbi Nechemia holds that b'mkoimon it's only mutter b'shoyim. Ella, when Reb Nechemia said in this brisa, it means b'shoigig, which is very weird because the Tanakama said that if the pairs leave your domain, b'shoigig, you can eat them outside of your tchum. And Reb Nechemia says if they're in your tchum, b'shoigig, you can eat them as well. So Reb Nechemia is talking about a different case than the Chachamim. The Chachamim are talking about when the pairs are out of the tchum, and Reb Nechemia is speaking about a case when the pairs are back in the tchum. So what's going on over here? There's something missing in the conversation between Reb Nechemia and the Tanakh. So you have to say that there's something missing here. The Tanakh said, if Paris leaves your tchum, the Tanakh holds they can be eaten out of the tchum if they left b'shogig. But if someone purposely took them out of the tchum, lo yechelu, they're not allowed to be eaten outside. When are we saying that the pairs can't be eaten? That's That's while they're still out of the tchum. If they're brought back in, even if it's mezid, they can be eaten. And that will be the sheet of the Tanakama, which is precisely what Rav Papa said. So Rav Papa will align perfectly with the Tanakama. But once the pairs come back in, even if they came back into mezid, you can eat them. So also Rav Nechemia comes to argue l'neimar that even if the pairs come back in to your original tchum, the should begin b'mezid lo. Only if they come back to b'shogig and b'mezid lo. So really, the machloikas is the Tanakama holds that there's an eitzah for these pairs, sai when they're out of the tchum and sai when they're in the tchum. If they're out of the tchum b'shogig, you can eat them there. And if they return back to Tchum B'mezid, you can eat them here. Reb Nechemia holds, out there you can never eat them, even b'shogig. And in here, you can eat them only b'shogig. And now you have a very nice machlokes tonight, what we suggested, and the Tanakama holds, like Rav Papa. So you don't necessarily have a raya. I can make an argument that everybody agrees that b'mezid, even b'mkoimon, you wouldn't be able to eat it. And therefore, you will not have a support to Rav Papa Shita. And this is what the Gemara wants to say. None of these Tanoim agree with Rav Papa. So what are they arguing about? We won't use the Chesur Mechsura. And they're arguing about exactly this case. The Machlokes is, while the payers are out of my tchum, but they left b'shogig, they were taken by mistake. To the Kamasavar b'shogig, sorry, shaloi b'mkoimon. Exactly like what the Tanakama says, that if they're outside the tchum, but it was shogig, they can be eaten there. The Nechemia Savar, afilu shogig b'mkoimon in, shaloi b'mkoimon lo. Shogig is only mutter once they come back in. But nobody holds that if they come back in b'mezid, that they're going to be mutter, and therefore a papa does not have support. Zok the Gemara, that would not be a logical way to understand the machlokes between the Tanakama and the Nechemia. And I'll tell you why. Because the brisa that we started with, when we asked the kasha on the papa, was the following brisa. When we could tell you Seifa, of Nechemia, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Oimrim, la'olam asurin, achi yachzeru l'mkoimon, shogigin. Now, if the machlokes was only about whether, if you're going to say that everybody agrees, only if it's shogig, it's mutter, the machlokes is, the Tanakama holds shogig is even mutter outside, and Nechemia holds shogig is only mutter inside, then this lashon that they used makes no sense. They said it's also achiyachzu the mekayman shogigin. What he should have said was la'olam asur and achiyachzu the mekayman, because everybody agrees, according to you, everybody agrees that mezid is also, and shogig, according to Tanakama, is mutter outside. So all Reb Nechemia should say is it's also until it comes inside. But about shogig, we agree. But since he's stuck in the word shogigin, so he said Ashiyashlim Klaiman A and B is shogigin to tell us that shogigin b'mezid loy, mechalal the Tanakama Sovar the mezid nami sharish mamida. From Reb Nechemia's response to the Tanakama, it must be that Reb Nechemia heard the Tanakama say that if it came back to my rishus, b'mezid it would be mutter, and on that Reb Nechemia had to speak out only shogigin. So therefore, you have a raya that kind of holds that if the payers came back in, even though they came back into Mazid, they'll still be mutter to eat, which is exactly what Rav Papa said. Beautiful. Nusuk. Omer Rav Nachman Omer Shmuel. A person is walking to the outer perimeter of his area. He wants to push the limit and see where the limit of his area is. And it wasn't marked. He doesn't know where it's coming. So how does he know how far he can go? He could walk 2,000 average steps. And Rashi says that the average footstep of a person is an amma. That would be the Tchum of Shabbos. The Omer Rav Nachman Omer Shmuel, and Rav Nachman said in the name of Shmuel, Shabbos B'Bikra. Here's an interesting story. There's a I think a series of stories in one of the magazines called Concentric Circles. So this is the case. Shabbos B'Bikra. You made yourself, you were calling your Shvisa in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a Bikra. So now you have 2,000 amas all the way around. That's the perimeter that you're entitled to. Now, you're not allowed to carry there because there's no area. You're allowed to walk around. You can carry only in Dalet amas. You can walk around 2,000 amas. What happened was, Goyim decided, your Muslim, Goyim decided they want to build a stadium there. And then they built a huge fence that was way bigger than your perimeter. You had 2,000 amas. They built a fence, maybe 8,000 amas around. They made a huge enclosure. Now, but what is significant about that? That doesn't change my tone. I'm still limited to 2,000 amas. But now there's an Eruv. And Rashi speaks out, the Gemaras tell us that a barrier, an Eruv that was built on Shabbos is a good Eruv. So I'm sitting here in the middle of a pickup, and the guy made a big Eruv. So now I'm allowed to carry. Not only can I walk around to 2,000 amas, I'm allowed to carry. So Zok the Gemara, if it's the Kufua, Nocher Mechitza, the Shabbos, so let's think about this. I have a 2,000 radius circle that I'm allowed to walk around. I'm not allowed to walk past it. But around that circle, there's even a bigger area that I'm allowed to carry in, but I can't get there, right? So I'm allowed to carry in my area. I'm allowed to carry, because I'm also technically within those same new walls. I'm allowed to carry in my 2,000 amma area. I'm allowed to carry outside the 2,000 ammas area. Problem I can't get there. But you can still carry, and I'll show you how.
Yosy,
yes.
They built that in one Shabbos? They built all around him? Are we talking about?
Yes. Yeah, it was like Trump. They were able to build 300 miles a day.
Because that's a lot of...
And they paid for it. He didn't even pay for it.
Because, 2,000 amas is over a mile, seems like. It sounds like it's a yard, right? They're using a one step
the
as a
circumference
yard.
of 2,000 amas is huge. The circumference of 2,000 amas is 2 pi r.
It's got to be almost 3 miles.
So it's 12 miles.
From end to end.
Yeah, we're talking about a huge fence. And the barrier that the Goyim built was much bigger than that area.
Yeah, something's not doesn't compute here. Yes.
So your question is this theoretical or is this actually happened? Is that your question?
Yeah. It's not very likely, but theoretical. We can argue theoretical. Okay, go ahead.
What happened was they parked smack in the middle of Woodstock the day before it started. So
by the way, I know a few people. That fence came down pretty quick in Woodstock.
Okay. The look is he's allowed to walk his area, but he's allowed to carry the whole place. How can he carry? Very simple. I'm allowed to take something from where I am in my room and throw it all the way to the fence because I'm allowed to carry there. I'm just not allowed to walk there. So here's a hechatemza. It's a good riddle. I'll ask you a question. If you can't get there, how could you carry it? Very simple. By throwing something there. That's the shita of Rav Nachman in the name of Shmuel. That even though you're limited to how far you can walk, you're not limited to how far you can throw. You have the entire enclosure. Rav Huna Amar, Rav Huna's Machmir. He said, no. Mahalach alpayim amma. You can walk your tchum, but you can't carry it all. I'm going to treat this entire area like it's a carmelis. Frankly, more. Why? Rav Huna had a very good. I'm sorry, Rav Nachman had a very good svara. Why can't I throw? There's an eruv. Why can't I throw something? Zakti Gemara, because he's a special gzeir. Shema yimshach achar chetzer. If you throw it out of your tchum, you might want it back, and you can't get it. So you're going to now walk out of your tchum to retrieve the object that you threw. Okay, effectively more. Okay, so I understand why you can't go past the 2,000 amas. But the alpayim mios litalto kiorche. Why can't I carry within my 2,000 amas? There, I don't have to be worried if I threw something within my 2,000 amas. I'm going to go out of the tchum. It's all within my tchum. Why are you being so machmer that I can't even carry out of Dal Rabbis? If you're in this inner circle, your inner circle is open to the outer circle. You're not allowed to throw into the outer circle, nor are you allowed to walk with a chayfetz into the outer circle. You're not allowed to because of the gzeira. But at the end of the day, that's an area you're not allowed to carry it. Since your inner circle, yes.
Sorry. So that's for that Shabbos. What about the following Shabbos? It seems that's in a...
The following Shabbos, that's not a problem with Tchum anymore. No,
okay, so he can walk wherever he wants.
Walls, then that might be your whole Tchum.
So the whole problem is because it was built on Shabbos. Is that right? It?
So even though it's good for carrying, but it won't be good for Tchum. And that's what the long Rashi is about. So you're actually bang on to what Rashi is discussing. That even though it works for carrying, but it doesn't work for Tchum unless you were shoyvis in those mechitzas. And the problem is the mechitzas weren't there when you were shoyvis. So now my inner circle is open to the outer circle. And I can't carry in the outer circle because of the gzeira that I might go and retrieve something from the outer circle. So therefore, since my inner circle is porous to an area that I cannot carry in, therefore I cannot even carry in the 2,000 amas where I'm allowed to be. So that's the machlok. So really, everybody agrees if you have a circle, an area that you're allowed to carry in, that's open to an area that you're not allowed to carry in, everybody agrees you're not allowed to carry it. The machlokes here, the crux of the machlokes between Rav Nachman and Rav Huna is whether you make this gzeira that I cannot throw it out of my tchum because I might walk to retrieve it. If you hold it at gzeira, now you've just made the outer area usher, and by definition, now you've made the inner area usher. But if you're allowed to throw, like Rav Nachman holds, so then the whole area is mutter for carrying, and therefore there's no problem at all. And that's the machlokes. Chiya bar Rav, Omar, he came up the middle.
What do you mean? Yosy, what do you mean if you hold from the Gezerah? How do you not hold from the Gezerah?
Rav Nachman holds there's no Gezerah. He holds you're allowed to throw out of your tchum as long as it's within the fence.
Oh, so there's machlokes whether there's a Gezerah or not?
Precisely. There's a machlokes if we're concerned that if you throw something out of your tchum, whether or not you're going to go and try retrieving it. It gets even more interesting. We're just getting started. So let's see what it says. So Chibarav Amar Mahalach Alpayim Amo Umetaltal Alpayim Amo. You could walk around your whole tchum and you can carry there. Zok Gemara, this shita doesn't make any sense. Come on. The liker of Nachman, he doesn't know like Rav Nachman, because Rav Nachman holds you could be metaltal in the entire area. But the liker of Huna, he doesn't know like Rav Huna either. Because if there's a gzeira that I can't throw it outside of the Alpayim Amma, then I shouldn't be able to carry it within the Alpayim Amma either. So how could Rav Chia justify to carry it only within the Alpayim Amma. Zakta Gemara, you're right. We misquoted Rav Chia. And Ema metalto ba'arba. He holds just like Rav Huna that you're not allowed to carry there at all. You have to keep it within 4 amos of each other. Frank the Gemara, Yachi Hani Rav Huna. So in essence, Chia Barav is saying the same thing as Rav Huna. So Gemara, you're right. Ema v'chein Omar Chia Barav. Instead of just saying Chia Barav Omar, say v'chein Omar of Chia Barav to indicate that Rav Chia agrees with Rav Huna. So now we have a machlokes. Let's just get clear. We have a machlokes between Rav Huna and Rav Nachman. Rav Huna said that you're not allowed to throw it out of your tchum because you might go and retrieve it. And Rav Nachman, in the name of Shmuel, said that I'm not worried. I'm not worried that if you throw something out of the tchum, you're going to go and retrieve it. So Amalei Rav Nachman and Rav Huna. Rav Nachman told Rav Huna, "Loi simloi galei de Shmuel." You shouldn't be arguing on me because I quoted Shmuel, and you shouldn't argue with Shmuel. You shouldn't make your gzeira. The Tanya Kavasi, because we actually have a brisa that proves that you don't make such a gzeira, that we're afraid you're going to throw something out of the tchum and then you're going to go retrieve it. That's not a valid gzeira. The Tanya, we looked in the brisa. A guy was measuring the 2,000 amas for his tchum. He wanted to know exactly where he can go. The kol midasi b'chatzeir, and his 2,000 amas ended in the middle of a city. So the law is he's not allowed to walk around the whole city. He's stuck within his 2,000 amas, but mutter letaltal b'chol leher kula. He's allowed to carry in the whole city, but he can't go over the tchum. So the question is, if you can't go past the tchum, how can you carry past the tchum? How is he going to carry out of the tchum if he can't be there? It must be exactly the case that Rav Huna and Shmuel are arguing, where the question is, can you throw something out of your tchum into a walled area? Are you going to be geyser that you want to retrieve it? So there are those who stop the Gemara here and don't continue the Gemara. And this is the end of the sugya where Rav Nachman shows Rav Huna that Shmuel was right, and there's no reason to make example. But the next line in the Gemara is, according to some Girsas there, Rashi brings the Girsa, Tosha brings the Girsa, and they have a response, and this response makes it very interesting. Amar Rav Huna, loy, al yedei Mashiach. You're not. This bride is not saying metalta b'choler kula. You're allowed to throw something out, because if you throw something out, this bride would agree to me. We're afraid you're going to go retrieve it. When this bride says mutar metalta b'choler kula, it means you're allowed to pull something in. So let's say you have an apple there on the floor that you want, and you have a hockey stick. You can stick your hockey stick out and pull the apple to you. So when you're throwing something out of the tchum, then we're afraid you're going to go and try to retrieve it. But when you pull something into the tchum, that's not yours. It's someone else's. You didn't bring it there. So there's no gzera, you're going to go after it, and therefore you're allowed to bring it to you. Tosfos says something even more interesting. And Tosfos says, Rashi is just talking about from within the tchum to out of the tchum. I'm allowed to pull from out of the tchum to in the tchum, but I'm not allowed to throw from in the tchum to out of the tchum. Tosfos says anywhere in, I'm allowed to throw from the perimeter to the center, but I'm never allowed to throw from the center to the perimeter, even if everything is contained within the tchum. Your direction of where you're throwing determines if you're allowed to throw it or not, which is fascinating. The reason why a lot of people aren't geyser this Gemara is because the teretz is not a good teretz. Because the Brisa says mutar latalta b'chol ha'ir kula. Based on what Rav Huna is saying now, if I have a hockey stick and there's something 3 or 4 feet away that I can reach with my hockey stick, I can pull it in. That's hardly mutar latalta b'chol ha'ir kula. It sounds like it's a big city. There could be miles there that I'm allowed to be a taltal in. And that will not be explained by Rav Huna's teretz. So in fact, we paskin like the Bryce who hold that you don't glazer. And in fact, if your tchum only goes up to a certain point, but you're allowed to carry further, you're allowed to throw something out of the tchum, and we're not glazer that you might come along, you might run and get your retrieve whatever you threw out. If you were going to retrieve it, you wouldn't have thrown it in the first place. Beautiful. Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna, who's machmer, even he has his limits as to how much he's machmer. And he said, you're measuring your perimeter. The cholza midasai v'chatzi chotzer. And now you stop the middle of a chotzer. Ein loy el chatzi chotzer. He's only allowed to go up to chatzi chotzer. Correctly more, what type of chiddush is that? Pshita. Of course you're entitled to chatzi chotzer. The chiddush is that he could carry in that half a chotzer. Correctly more, hainami pshita. It's also possible. You might carry the whole thing. So we have to stop here for a minute. Rav Huna said that when the Goyim built a barrier around you, you're not allowed to throw something out because you might retrieve it. So why should a chotzer be any different? By a chotzer, he does allow you to carry up until the point that your tchum is. So why is it that he doesn't have a problem? So Rashi tells us very beautiful. The difference between a chotzer and an area in the middle of nowhere where the guy made a barrier is the chotzer is a good chotzer for whoever lives there. Whoever's chotzer it is, it's a private chotzer, it's Rosh Hashanah, he's allowed to carry there. So you can't say that I'm not allowed to carry in my tchum because my chotzer is nifritza to an area that I can't carry in, because even though I personally can't carry there, but it's still a Rosh Hashanah and people can carry there. So therefore, it doesn't make sense that will aser me to carry within my tchum. But when I'm in the middle of nowhere and the guy made this barrier around me, that's not a Rosh Hashanah for anybody but me. No one's living there until now. So therefore, it's going to be also to carry in that entire area. Omer Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman said, Moidul Huna. Hey, to you it's Rav Huna. But Rav Nachman said, Moidul Huna. Rav Huna is moided to me. A guy is measuring the cholza midasai al svas tikra, which means there was a house that the wall facing you was destroyed. So now you have a house with 3 walls and a roof, and your 2,000 amas ended right at the front wall of that house, the front wall that's no longer there. The article offers a simple picture. It just looks like a box. It doesn't really look like anything. But all it means is the front wall was missing. So, and right there at that line where the front wall would have been is where your tchum ended. So Zokt Ahelik Gemara. Rav Nachman is telling Rav Huna, there you should agree to me. You're actually allowed to carry the whole house. Even Rav Huna would admit that over there's no gzera that I might go retrieve my chavitz. You know why? My time at hoil b'tikras habayis. We say b'tikra yoyed v'soisim. I see that wall there. I'm going to remember. Normally, the chotzer is just wide open. There's nothing reminding me not to cross the line out of my tchum. There's no barrier there. But if I have a structure there, that structure I know is my limit. I won't, by mistake, cross that limit. Therefore, I'm not even throw something into the open house, and there's no isser because I'm not worried that the guy will walk there. Omar Rav Huna B'Rav Yosy. Hit the noise. So let's just review. We had a machlokes Rav Huna and Rav Nachman, and the machlokes was whether or not you make a gzera that I might throw it, and if I throw it, I might walk there. So do you make a gzera of zrika? We're answering zrika to tilto. We're answering zrika because I might walk it to retrieve it. Whether or not you make such a gzera would be totally in the familiar machlokes tanoim that we had in our Mishnah. And what do we have in our Mishnah? Goyim kidnapped him, Now, if they kidnapped him and they left him in the middle of a bikah, in the middle of a nowhere, everybody holds he's stuck within 4 amas. That's it, he can't move. But if they brought him into a city, they didn't take him into a farm. Rather, they took him into a city, or when Nasnu, B'dira B'Sayar, they put him into an enclosed area. There, Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Lezer ben Isaiah, Oimrim, Mahalach Eskula. There, their abundant are lenient with him, and even though he should really only have 4 amas, but since he's in an enclosed area, they let him have that entire area to walk around. Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Kiva, Oimrim, Ein Lo Ela 4 amas. There's no leniency. Even there, he could only spend his Shabbos in those 4 amas. So, what is this machlokes about? My love, the Gemara wants to suggest that this is what the machlokes is about. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Lezer ben Azariah, the Armu Mahalach Eskula. The reason why I'm allowed to walk around the entire enclosed area is the loy gozru hilach dir v'soyar otu hilach b'vikla. They're not afraid that if we let him walk around in a pen, he might also walk around in a bikra. Now let me just clarify this, because this is very weird. We're talking about a guy who was kidnapped, and we're saying if he was kidnapped and they placed him in captivity into this enclosed area, we're not geyser that maybe next week he'll get kidnapped and they'll be put into a bikra. And if here we let him walk around, we're afraid next week when he gets kidnapped, he's going to walk around. So it's almost like getting kidnapped was routine. If we let him walk around this time when he's kidnapped, then next time if he's kidnapped in the bikra, he might also walk around. So it's a little bit strange to me. It's a far-fetched gzeira, unless it was fairly common to get kidnapped.
It's not so far-fetched. So if they kidnapped him the first time, that means they paid the ransom. So that's why they kidnapped him the second time, because they're getting the money.
I hear it. Okay, so now I understand. Two guys are talking in shul. I can imagine two guys talking in shul. Yaakov, wie bist du gekidnapped geworden letzte Woche? Where were you kidnapped to last week? Oh, I'm hoping this week to get kidnapped to Barbados. Last time I got kidnapped to Siberia. Zog to Gemara. So you see that he doesn't make gzeros. So with the hiluch, atu hiluch loy gozri, since you see Rabbi Gamliel was not inclined to make a gzera from walking out of the tchum in one place, to walking out of the tchum in another place, so therefore, tiltul atu hiluch loy gozri. So it's also logical to say that they won't make this gzera, that if you throw it, you might go retrieve it. So if you think about it, these two gzeras have nothing to do with each other. They're two completely separate gzeras. We're just suggesting, since Rabbi Gamliel is not inclined to make gzeras relative to these tchumen, so maybe he won't make a gzera here either. It's not exactly a beautiful raya that the Tanoim are arguing about the same machlokes. It's just generally we're saying that Rabbi Gamliel is not predisposed to making gzeras. Rabbi Shua, Rabbi Kiva, the Ayrim Ein Lo Ela 4 amas, because they're gozri hiluch dir v'soyar atu hiluch lebika. They're afraid he will get kidnapped next week and then he's going to walk around. Therefore, with the hiluch atu hiluch gozri, titul atu hiluch nami gozri. Since they're inclined, they do make gezeres, so maybe they'll also be gozer that if you throw something, you might retrieve it. Hard to really make that connection that these machlokes hinge upon each other. And in fact, that's what the Gemara really said. Mimaizot Gemara, what's the raya? Dilma kilay gozri, Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Lezer ben Azariah. Where were they not gozer from a soyar atu a bika? That's hiluch soyar v'dir atu hiluch bika. You know what? Hanamili hasam the shnei b'kay missing. There's two separate places. This week I'm in a soyar. Next week I might be in a bika. Why would you make a gzer from one place to the next place? Aval tiltul atu hiluch. But in our case, where it's a much more real chashash, I'm standing right here at the border of my tchum, and I want to throw something over. I might go retrieve it. That's a much more legitimate concern to make a gzer about. So therefore, the makam echeru, it's in one place at one time. Hachanami the gzer gzera sham yim tzarach. Maybe in fact Rabbi Gamliel would make the gzera, and he would be consistent with her puma. And on the flip side, Rabbi Shua, Rabbi Kiva, who said the reason why they don't let you move more than 4 amas in the Sire, who said it has anything to do with Xera? Maybe the ultimate Ikar think it's a problem. Remind me, the Gazri who said the reason why they don't give you more than 4 is because of Xera? Doma Mishum the Kasavri, maybe they hold Kiyamrin Kalabayas Kule Karba Amis Domi. When you say the whole house is like Dalat Amis and therefore you're allowed to spread out to the entire area. This is like what David Zolty said earlier. That's only if you were in these mechitos when Shabbos came. Then you could spread out the whole area. But in this case, where the Goyim put him there on Shabbos, loy, they would not allow you to be in that entire area. But it has nothing to do with the machlokes. So at the end of the day, the machlokes of Huna and Reb Nachman has nothing to do with the machlokes in our Mishnah. It's a completely independent machlokes as to whether or not we disallow him to throw something out of the tchum because he might retrieve it. Period. Omar Rav. So let's just run back to the Mishnah because there were 3 cases in the Mishnah. There was the first case, which was when the Nachrim kidnapped him and put him into a deer sire, a deer in the sire, where Rabbi Gamliel said he could walk around the whole area. Rabbi Yeshua said he only had Dalad. And the next case was a case of a ship. Rabbi Gamliel let him walk around the ship, and Rabbi Yeshua said Rabbi Yeshua didn't walk around the ship. So Zok the Gemara that Rav Paskin, like Rabbi Gamliel, but deer v'sar Shvina. Across the board, he passes like Rabbi Gamliel. Or Shmuel Amar hilchos like Rabbi Gamliel b'Shvina. Shmuel says, no, I'm not paskening like Rabbi Gamliel by deer and sayar. If you get kidnapped and you're in an enclosed area, you only have 4 amas. But in the ship, I'm paskening like Rabbi Gamliel that you're allowed to walk around the ship. Avol b'deer v'sayar loy. Zok Gemara, okay, where do we have consensus? Everybody seems to agree that on the ship, you're allowed to walk around the whole ship on Shabbos. My timer, what is the reasoning for Rabbi Gamliel? Why does he allow you to walk around the entire ship on Shabbos? You're out of your tchum. Rabbi said, a ship is an aircraft carrier doesn't have walls. If you walk across the deck, you can walk right off the deck. But every other ship has a perimeter around the deck. That perimeter is usually 10 tefachim high, and that creates its own domain. So Zok Rava, every ship is its own domain, and that's how Rabbi Gamliel holds. You're allowed to walk around the whole deck of the ship.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you mean? There's even an aircraft carrier, there's a drop. Isn't that considered, there's a substantial drop. Isn't that considered a mechitza?
I don't know. Maybe that wasn't accurate. I was just trying to highlight the walls of the ship.
Oh, okay. Just wanna, okay.
I couldn't find, the Rashba doesn't discuss aircraft carriers. I was just trying to highlight the walls of the ship create the barrier. Maybe underneath the deck there's probably also walls. I was just trying to say it's not a. As a matter of fact, there are some in Army lingo they actually refer to aircraft carriers as flat tops. A flat top is a slang military word to describe an aircraft carrier. But yeah, it could be an aircraft has a wall too. But I just meant to highlight the wall around it is what Rabbah says creates its own domain. Omar, a different story. Hoyel usnina noitlosoi mitchilas arba umenachle b'soiv harba. Nothing to do with walls. The problem is if you're on a ship, you're moving, you're never in Dalaramas. There's no Dalaramas that becomes your Dalaramas that you're pinned to. Because every time you pick your foot up and put it down, you're in a different Dalaramas. So you actually never park. So basically, when you're in a moving ship, you've never parked. Since you've never parked, you were never limited to any Dalaramas. Because you actually have to be in a Dalaramas for at least a moment to be kind of. But since you're moving, you're never in a Dalaramas. That's the most popular pshat of Rashi. Rashi had another pshat that says if the boat's going east and you're walking west on the ship, so you're like on a treadmill, even though you're on a different place on the deck, but from your geographic GPS location, you're in the same place. But Rashi doesn't like that shot because what if you turn around and walk the other way? Then you're going to be out of your location. So the shot that Rashi likes is that since it's constantly moving, you're never parked in the Dalet Amos. So you actually will never coin a shvisa in the Dalet Amos. My benai, what's the difference between Rabba's shot in Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Zer's shot in Rabbi Gamliel? So what if the wall of the ship broke off? And this must be the wall of the ship above the deck. If it's below the deck or below the water line, the ship's going to sink. So it just means that the walls of the ship broke, so now the ship isn't encompassed with the wall. According to Rabbah, you wouldn't be able to move out of your Dalet Amos. But according to Reb Zera, it's not the walls. Never in a ship are you ever limited to any specific area. That's one way to be a chiluk. Inami bekoifetz misvina l'svina. What if you jump from one ship to another ship? It's called jumping ship. What if you jump ship on Shabbos? So you're no longer in the same barriers that you were in before Shabbos. So according to Rabbah, you would be stuck with your Dalet Amos. But according to Reb Zera, since you're always moving, you're never limited to any specific Dalet Amos. Zokumar Reb Zera, my time below Yom Rabbah. Why didn't Reb Zera say like Rabbah about the walls? The walls create a domain. Amalach, because he holds that mechitzos, the mechitzos of a ship, lavriach mayim, they're not barriers to contain the passengers inside. Rather, they're just made to keep the water out, and that doesn't qualify as a wall that will create a domain. So Zok Gemara, Rabbah, my time Eloy Amar Reb Zera. Why didn't Rabbah like Reb Zera's far? Whenever you're on a moving ship, you're never kind of shmisa. So therefore, the entire ship is your Dalet Amos. Why didn't Rabbah like that svara? Zok Gemara, I like that svara very much. I actually agree to it. Not only do I agree to it, Rabbi Yeshua also agrees. Rabbi Yeshua was the guy who didn't want to walk around the ship. He disagreed with the Gamliel, but he agrees with you, Rabbi Zera. And B'hamehaleches, when the ship is moving, Zok Rabbah, Kula Amaloi Pligi. Everybody agrees, even Rabbi Yeshua holds, that when the ship is moving, you're allowed to walk around the ship because you were never cutting shvisa anyway. Ki Pligi, the whole disagreement between Rabbi Yeshua, who didn't want to walk around, and Rabbi Gamliel, who was happy to walk around the ship, was Bishabba. Their whole concern is when the ship stops, and the shaila is, do the walls of the ship create a perimeter? So now, if you look at it, it's very interesting. According to Rabbah, everybody agrees to Reb Zera, both Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua, and everybody agrees while the ship is moving, you're allowed to walk around. And the machlokes is only if the walls of a ship is considered a special domain, and if the ship stops, Rabbi Gamliel holds you're allowed to carry there, and Rabbi Yeshua holds you're not allowed to carry there. That's how Rabbah learns. According to Rabbi Zera, the walls of the ship were never anything. And the machlokes between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua was, are you allowed to walk around the ship while it's moving? Amr Reb Nachman bar Yitzchak. From our Mishnah, it sounds like the machlokes is only when the ship. The machlokes is only when the ship stops. That there's no machlokes. Everybody agrees that while the ship is moving, everybody agrees you're allowed to walk around that ship. Mimai, how do I know that? Midikatani, what was the case? They left on the ship and they were moving around on the ship. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Holchu Eskula. Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah strolled all around the ship. Rabbi Shua, Rabbi Kiva, Loi Zozu Me'arba Amos. They didn't move. Not because they held it was usher. The Mishnah doesn't say they held it was usher. It says Sharatzu Lahakmer Alatzman. They were just being machmer. So what do you mean they were being machmer? It's either usher or mutter. Zok Reb Nachman is beautiful. Yamit Bishlama B'malachas like Pligi. If you'll say like what Reb Zera just offered, like what Rabbah just offered, that everybody agrees to Reb Zera that while the ship is moving, you're allowed to walk around. So then it makes sense. Now we know why Rabbi Shua didn't want to walk around, because he wanted to be machmer. Why was he being machmer? Dilma Amda. They're afraid like musical chairs. At any moment, the ship will stop moving. And if they're walking around, they're going to be in trouble. So Rabbi Shua and Rabbi Kiva agreed that while the ship is moving, you can walk around. He agreed to Rabbi Gamliel, but they were machmer on themselves not to walk around because they were afraid that the ship would stop. And if the ship would stop, then they would no longer be able to walk around. While Rabbi Gamliel held, even if the ship stops, we can walk around because we hold to those barriers. We hold that the walls of a ship are a barrier. Aliyamad Pligi, if you're going to say that they're even arguing about a moving ship, Hi Rotzu Lahachmer, what do you mean Rabbi Shua wanted to be machmer, he didn't walk around? Isuru, it's not a chomer. According to them, you're not allowed to walk around on a moving ship. Elamai, they must hold that you are allowed to walk around on a moving ship. And their whole shaila was, are you allowed to walk around on a ship that's not moving? And they didn't want to walk around on the moving ship because they were machmer, because they were afraid the ship could stop at any minute. Amar Bashi, I also have a boat that can stop at any minute. I have the same problem. Amar Ravashi, Ravashi says, Masnisin Amideka, and I'm going to bring you another proof from the Mishnah that the machloikis is by a stationary ship. Because the case of the ship is the second case in the Mishnah. What was the first case of the Mishnah? The Kedani Svina Dumya the Dir V'Soya. Right before we discussed the shayla of the ship, we're discussing a person who was kidnapped and placed into a pen. Ma Dir V'Soya the Kavi. Just like the Dir and Saya are stationary places, they're not mobile. It's logical to say that the next case that's somewhat related to the first case is also a stationary object. So there, he wasn't saying it himself. He was quoting Rav and Shmuel that we just discussed at the bottom of Amud Beis, that both Rav and Shmuel agree that we pass like Rabbi Gamliel by Svina, you're allowed to walk around the ship. So Hilchasa, Mechlal de Pligi. If Rav and Shmuel are passing like Gamliel, then it must be that they hold that Rabbi Yeshua argues on Rabbi Gamliel. Now, if Rabbi Yeshua argues on Gamliel, then it wasn't just a chumrah, right? If you're going to say that it was only a chumrah that they didn't want to walk around, so then they're really agreeing to Rabbi Gamliel. But here it's mashma that there's a real machloikas about it. Zok Gemara in, you're right, there was a machloikas about it. But Tanya we learned, Chananya said, Kol Oisei that entire day on the ship, there was an argument between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Yeshua held it was also to walk around, and Rabbi Gamliel held it was mutter to walk around. They sat and they were pasking, which means even though Rabbi Gamliel held you allowed to walk around, he was sitting down because he was talking and arguing with Rabbi Yeshua. And then what happened was, Emish in the evening, Chananya, who was the nephew of Rabbi Yeshua, Chananya says, in the evening, my uncle paskin halacha Rabbi Gamliel b'sfina. So even my uncle agreed. So you see, at the beginning there was a machlokes, and then my uncle agreed. V'halacha Rabbi Kiva v'dir v'sayar. But by dir v'sayar, we don't paskin like Rabbi Gamliel. We paskin like you're stuck in your four amos. So you see. So let's just finalize Rashi. Even when the ship is stationary, Rabbi Gamliel argues, we only pass like Gamliel when it's moving. If it stops, so the way Rashi is learning is we only pass like Gamliel that you're allowed to walk around the moving ship, but if a ship is stopped, we'll pass like Rabbi Yeshua, and we will not allow you to walk around. So I guess we could stop here. So Mem Gimel is tomorrow's daf. So tomorrow we're learning twice. We're learning at 5:30. We're learning at 5:40. We're learning at 5:40 to 6:30 slichas. So tomorrow we're learning at 5:40, and we're also having another chumur at 9 o'clock. So everybody have a good davach. I just want to send Rabbi Yisrael Lewis a message. Rabbi Yisrael, I got an email over Yom Tov that my insurance claim went through.
Mazel tov.
So thank you so much.
Mazel tov. Thank you.
For what?
For my glasses.
How many months did it take?
Too long,
Since-
but Baruch